But first it's boxing. And let's get the latest thoughts from the two men in action tonight, Joe Bugner, but first his American opponent, Dino Dennis. He stands 6'3" tall, he comes from Boston, and he's won 49 of his 54 fights.
I think Joe had his chance years ago, and he more or less disappointed the people of England, because it seemed like the people of England had a lot of pride, and Joe just didn't have enough pride himself. I think he's lacking a lot of heart, which I have, and he doesn't, and he's got 25 pounds on me, but that's nothing. In other words, like, as far as I'm concerned, he'll be faster than he is, and come that 8th, 9th, and 10th round, he should be tired from that weight. I mean, it's just too much weight to carry on. He's better off being a football player than a boxer.
He says you're bigger than him, but your heart's not in it.
Well, if that's what he thinks, he should talk to some of my opponents. And he will know that my heart has been in it always. I may not have knocked all the people out in my career, but I think somewhere around 40, 42 opponents who did go out, they'll tell a story different.
Well, they're certainly talking a good fight. Turning for a moment to Frank Bruno. Frank, how impressed have you been with Joe in his two previous fights?
Very impressed, because he's done the job. That's what he's been paid for.
Results that count?
Yeah.
Terry, what about you? Looking at the fight tonight and with an experienced observer's eye, what are you looking for from Bugner and what do you expect to see?
I think I'd like to see him get past a few rounds. I'd like to see him get past 5, 6 rounds, because I had the feeling both of the first two fights that he was beginning to tire. He has been out for a long time, and I'd just like to see him get past the halfway mark and see how he copes with that.
How big a problem will Dino Dennis be? Because he's a fairly durable character by his record, isn't he?
Well, it's a bit hard to tell, you know. He's been about a long time. He's had a lot of tough fights, and it's just if they've caught up with him or not. But he's obviously a tough opponent.
Do you fancy him tonight, Frank?
Yeah, I do fancy him, because he's on home territory.
Bugner, and you say Bugner as well?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Bugner as well. Well, we'll see. In a moment, then, we'll be going across to the Alexandra Pavilion for Joe Bugner against Dino Dennis, and that comes up after a short break. Night is now just a moment or two away. Let's join our commentator in the Alexandra Pavilion, Reg Gutteridge.
Well, hello there, and there's certainly a great deal of atmosphere now. You've joined us exactly on time, because the American John Dino Dennis, there he is, coming into the ring, who certainly sounded very confident indeed in our pre-dressing room interview there, pre-fight interview, putting his hands on his manager and trainer's shoulders there just to make sure that nobody shakes his hand too much. A lot of personality, this fellow. And to be fair, the crowd are trying to be a bit fair, but there's also a share of boos. He came in at 15 stone 5 pounds. And now the disco music, I think it's called Second Time Around, for the other man, Joe Bugner. First appearance in this country of Dino Dennis, who's been around among the big timers. 54 fights, this fellow, 49 wins and a draw. And the 4 losses, strange enough, have been always against big opponents. Foreman, Cooney, Leroy Jones, and recently to Donnie Long. So the lights are dipped, and we got a shot of Joe Bugner leaving the dressing room now, and the hands on his shoulders of Ernie Fossey, and he too gets the cheers and the boos. He's always had a love-hate relationship going with the crowd, Joe Bugner. I thought perhaps he was a little bit edgier than I've seen him against the 2 British fighters he had in his comeback fights with Winston Allen and Eddie Nielsen. He seemed a little bit edgy in the dressing room. He came in at 16 stone and 7 pounds. They weighed in, actually, on a kilo machine at 1 o'clock today, which didn't seem very satisfactory. They had trouble with the conversion. And I think they sort of stepped on the scales before they came in tonight. And weight really doesn't matter that much with heavyweights. In fact, Joe Bugner, when he knocked out Richard Dunn, weighed 16 stone 2. So he hasn't really put on that amount of weight. And they're all gloved up. Sometimes they do that little ritual in the ring, but both camps agreed to glove up in the dressing room and come straight back into action. And the corner crew there, Ernie Fossey, Robert Warren and Victor Andretti, who used to be a champion, has now got a license as a trainer. And Dennis being disrobed.
Gentlemen, please. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the main event of the evening. Frank Warren proudly presents an international heavyweight contest of 10 3-minute rounds, sponsored by Crest Hotels. Introducing in this corner, ladies and gentlemen, from Boston, USA, John Dino Dennis. And from London, ladies and gentlemen, the former heavyweight champion of Great Britain and Europe, Joe Bugner. At the weigh-in today, Dennis scaled 15 stones 5 pounds, Bugner 16 stones 7 pounds. The officials for this contest: referee Mr. Roland Dakin, timekeeper Mr. Tom Powell.
So that's the announcements over and on with the business. And I'm afraid that Dino Dennis got his pounds mixed up a bit there in the dressing room. He's not giving away 25, he's only giving away 16. Scheduled then for 10 rounds. And it really is a very small ring. It's only 16 foot 6 inches. And the minimum size for a ring. You couldn't hear the bell there, the referee. What's the problem here? I think he's having trouble hearing the bell. Right, so he wants to start on time. Oh, well, what do you think about that? Bugner did that with Richard Dunn. This fellow takes a good shot, and it looks as though he'll need to. Stopped in his last fight, Dennis, but he'd had a run of wins just before that. And when you've been in with George Foreman and Jerry Cooney, you know what it's like to take good punches, but he's never been counted out. He's been stopped, and he's made a big point and said, well, I've never had the top doleful 10, as they say in America, counted over me. That was the one that got away, which rather pleased Dennis. So, quite a bit of action, really, in the opening minute. A little bit of encouraging teeth gritting going on by Bugner, sometimes a bit lackadaisical at the off. I think maybe some of the press criticisms have got to him today. Talking about road to nowhere and things like that upset Joe. Dennis gets a number 16 in the American Ring Magazine ratings, and they did invent the rating system, but he's not in the WBA, WBC top 10. I would have thought Bugner would have got down to a bit of left-hand jabbing, trying to soften this fellow up. He's used to opponents rushing in and banging around the ribs like this. Well, if he's a durable character, Dennis, he's going to have to prove it here. He's carrying a little bit of scar tissue around the eyes, and I would have thought there's a chance that they could open. So half a minute to go then. That's the left jab again. Not a lot of power in it, but good point scoring stuff.